Right now, we're going to talk about sales. This will be about 45 minutes. That's the goal. Till about 45 minutes past the hour here. So, today we have Adam Slutskin, who is Chief Revenue Officer of Liongard, joining us. Warren Finkel, Managing Partner and Founder of ACE IT, and Leif Wilkerson, CEO of Mytech Partners. These guys are both MSPs, and they have a lot of sharings, and they're also at a different kind of path along the journey in sales. So we're going to talk about that today. And feel free, please answer the poll questions. So we'll get that answers up. And any questions, they shouldn't just be me asking the questions. Feel free to start asking questions, and I'll kind of layer them in during the conversation. All right. So today, this is about sales, account management, selling, how the sales has evolved. And why don't we start? We'll go in order. I'll go with Leif and then Warren first. Kind of talk about where you are in this sales process journey from being owner-led and kind of where you are in that process. You want to start us off, Leif?
Sure. Really, over the course of the years of Mytech, we have really gone from a owner-led, or what I call principal-led selling, to a principal mindset selling is how I probably describe it now, is getting the principal or the owner out of the primary relationship and getting staff to have that same mindset, but sell in place of that. And kind of the steps along the way there for us were, going from principal-led selling to hiring account managers that also sold kind of a hybrid hunter-farmer model to a true hunter-farmer model or hunter account management model, and really looking to figure out how to maximize that over the sales force and building a sales team that can build from basic selling skills all the way up into the advanced selling skills that we all had built our businesses on as a principal.
Okay, great. What about you, Warren?
So we founded ACE IT back in 2009, and we've been owner-led. That's my job, to bring in new business development. We recently hired a consultant to start evolving into some sales teams. So we hired this consultant to put together a better process. But we've been successful with VCIOs as account managers. We've got hunters now. We've got business development team. We've got client account managers. So I think over the course of time, I still maintain key relationships, but I'm letting each of these teams that we've hired develop, strategic relationships with these clients.
Okay. Hey, we have a question from Terry. Terry out of New Jersey here. He said, "Who was the consultant there, if you don't mind?"
He's from Taylor Business Group, Michael Cummings.
Okay, got it. All right, thanks. So,
or Adam. I've used Adam here. Well, he's on your left or your right, actually. Adam, I don't know if he has the time to do sales consulting, but he's been terrific helping me out as well.
Thanks, Warren.
So, Adam, what is that, as you have worked with other MSPs over the years, as Warren just said, kind of what's that first step from the owner to what's that first salesperson hire? What do you see? What do you recommend?
Yeah, we definitely have known Leif and Warren for a while. We had a great chat the other day about this. Some of the things I think that, we were kind of laughing about a little bit was, we'll talk about maybe some of the horror stories first a little bit, is, an MSP, which really starts off with, with that vision from more of a technologist than a business person, saying, hey, I want to be in this IT services industry. And then I know that first jump into sales or making that decision on who to hire and how to hire, it's not an easy one. It's one that I can relate to. I'd be in the same boat hiring a technologist. And I think some of the mistakes made are, quote unquote, the person that you try to hire first that maybe says they have the book of business. I'm going to date myself a little bit, and say the Rolodex, even though it's an electronic Rolodex now. It's a CRM, but they say they have the contacts, and then they kind of get put in that corner to go sell. And then unfortunately, without a lot of direction or process, and it's near 100% failure when it starts that way. So I think the way that usually we'll work together is really understanding what are the goals, trying to understand what we're trying to accomplish from a net new standpoint. Is it volume and we're trying to increase market share and gain a lot of clients? Are we really trying to be very limited and focused in the volume of clients that an MSP is trying to get? Do we understand that division of focus with, focusing on new clients, new logos versus, how to grow that revenue from the install base? So I think a lot of that initially, Mark, is, in that regard, and, Warren, from our conversations, it's really understanding some of that delegation of duties and how we really want to attack it, and then putting some numbers to it, starting to understand some of the realistic goals that you can accomplish.
I think with these salespeople that you're looking to hire, if you are looking to hire salespeople, you really got to look into their past. Resumes mean nothing. It's their experience over the phone that could change. Back when I hired some people and Adam told me, hey, they're not going to work out, he was right on the money. And it's because they were able to, again, I wasn't fooled by the resume. It was just more of so happy to find a person within the industry that can sell, but he didn't have what it took.
You got to be careful that the best sales job they ever do is to get the job.
Yeah, it's true, Leaf. They'll fight to win the thing that they shouldn't win sometimes, right?
Yeah. Well, I think, for us, one of the things that, we came to a realization as a principal or an owner led, that the deck is kind of stacked when we go in front of a client, because we are sharing a lot of their pains as business owners, and we can relate. And sometimes we lean heavily on our familiarity with business in general. And that usually helps us close the deal. When you start to hire sales staff, they don't necessarily have that same visibility into an organization, and they can't necessarily relate with an owner the same way that we do with that kind of stacked deck. And so, through, mentoring and giving your sales staff the ability to sit at that table the same as you are as a principal is the challenge, because they're first going to rely on sales tactics that we as principals probably never even used, right? Because we went in there, with our owner mentality hat on and closed the deal that way. So that's our challenge. It's I think the largest constraint in our industry to growth is to be able to replicate what we all did to build our business. And there are definitely outliers. There are, obviously MSPs that have been, spawned by sales driven individuals, but by and large, the vast majority of us have come from a technical background or technical selling, and not in shifting from a tech driven company to a sales driven organization is a big shift to accomplish growth.
Sure. Leaf, how did you transit that very first time you had to have that transition to, if you maybe describe for the audience a little bit about today, your new sales and your account management team, how many and how that's structured a little bit?
I think I know where you're going here. So, the first thing I would say is, when we first hired our first salespeople, we didn't have the right understanding of the appetite we needed for patients, thinking, oh, we'll hire somebody with the Rolodex or the electronic book of business, and in 3 months, they should be selling something. And the first thing we learned is it's a year to 18 months before a salesperson is full stride. Now, that doesn't mean they can't produce in the first year, especially if they're coming from another maybe competitor or, you know, that is seasoned in the industry. But taking somebody that is even in an adjacent industry, it takes quite a bit for them to get their feet under them and develop the relationships and start selling your stack or your solutions to really get good at it. And, you know, one of the benchmarks we look at is within the first 9 to 12 months, they should have been able to cover their salary and gross margin in selling. And if we can accomplish that, that's a win. And are they, you know, up until that point, what you're doing is you're measuring their activities and being defined on what you expect them to do. Because at the end of the game, some of it is also a numbers game. But the other thing that, you know, if you look at our sales teams today, and I know a lot of MSPs have done this on the technical side, where we have built pods or teams from a service delivery perspective, we now have mirrored that on our sales side, and we have sales teams that align with our service teams. And we're using the same methodology that we use to build our service team about, you know, how do you bring a level 1 tech to a level 2 tech to a level 3 tech? We're doing that on the sales side. How do we bring entry-level salespeople in, work as a team together so that sales team has a leader as well that is responsible for making sure the other members of their sales team, and that's in account management and account coordination, that they are learning those advanced selling skills is also how we're doing that. And then also making sure that we have a selling methodology and that is a common language across your sales teams, that your sales managers know what to expect. You know, whether it's, you know, we use, actually I have it here, action selling, but whether it's Sandler sales or whatever selling method, that's the other thing that we learned as we started to have multiple sales teams. We needed to have a common sales language across our organization as well, so that we were more consistent in what we were looking for.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to jump in on that a little bit, Mark, because first of all, what's really great is, you know, Warren and Leaf both have a different approach, and both are successful. But if you really want to start to be like where Leaf is, and from, I mean, I don't know, it's hundreds of MSPs I've had a chance to work with directly, and I'm so blessed I've had that chance. If you really want to build a very robust sales team like Leaf has, it really is embracing what he's talking about. And I think what that is understanding that it's process and data driven, very much like technology. And I think the old school perception is, you know, you hire a good salesperson, you know, they got some gift of gab, you know, they're willing to go out there and deal with a lot of rejection and good stuff happens. And then the reality is, I think if you really think about it, great sales is about being a data scientist. And it's about understanding what Leaf's talking about. And he's nodding his head. He figured it out. It's about having a common language to measure sales. And it doesn't matter if it's selling to new prospects or growing the revenue to your you know, with your existing clients. You know, you embrace the language, you embrace the methodology, whichever one it is, and there's a lot of good ones out there. And then it's really sticking to that and having the entire organization speak the same way, and also having that repetition of that methodical cadence of review. And when you use your CRMs, and we're at the IT Nation show, so a lot of you have ConnectWise. I can speak for myself. When I was at ConnectWise, When we left, I don't know, we had 250, 300 strong in our sales team, and we leveraged ConnectWise. Now, if you have Autotask or Synchro or whichever one that you use, or Kaseya's, I don't want to forget anybody, so I'm not favoring anybody, but embrace your system. Salesforce, HubSpot, it's all there. We use HubSpot now where I'm at, so you can make it work. But I did want to touch on that because I think Leaf is really figuring it out. And I know we have some questions there, Mark, if you want to get to them. Greg and Terry have a couple.
One of the questions that Terry was asking, he's going through, they're having trouble with having a salesperson stick in the organization, a new one. And then he kind of is focused, he's asking more about that consultant. Would you recommend having someone come in and consult with his organization, help him kind of get that process in place, help him get some salespeople, maybe set up that 12 to 18 month ramp to get up to speed? What are your thoughts? Anyone?
Yeah, so we hired the sales consultant because it wasn't frustrating me that I didn't have a sales team, but it was frustrating that I didn't have the right process in place. So I think being an owner-led sales, you're basically in control of every account. And as we continue to hire account managers, or we took two of our most technical or senior people and moved them into a VCIO role, and they're managing these clients. But with this consultant, we're going to try and emulate what Leaf did, because I think that makes a lot of sense. It will take us to the next level. But it's a long process, and I believe Leaf, that 12 to 18 months is certainly could be painful because you want to see results, and that's the biggest problem with hiring salespeople. You really don't want to spend 12 to 18 months on that investment, but you have to be willing to, because we're not just selling cars, we're selling solutions. And as we continue to see the cyber market grow, we continue to see solutions in Azure or AWS, migrations to cloud, clients want to have these solutions, and most of these salespeople have to learn also. So if you're going to hire a salesperson from within the industry, it goes back to that Rolodex. Could he start bringing in clients from the current MSP, which of course they can't. So it's you have to try a few different things. And I think with COVID, because we're all sitting here wondering how to thrive and how to get to the next level here, we're trying different things. And that's why I've decided to hire that consultant to see if we can put together a better process. And again, I agree with what Adam was saying. I had a conference call with him and one other person from Liongard regarding CRM. You got to live in that CRM. So when you have these cadence calls, you're able to understand, what they're tracking and what they're up to and what their activity is. And if it's not in ConnectWise, it doesn't exist.
In a lot of ways, it's like, and I get it, I'm trying to pick out a couple words that, MSPs, we always talk about, billable hours. And in a lot of ways, if you equate that to sales, it's the same way. Going back to what Leaf talked about with activity, every sale starts with activity, right? You can't get to a sale without activity. And so it really is understanding how to measure that activity so that you can understand, look, all things remaining the same. We know if we follow the process, we know the words, we understand the value proposition of our business, whether you're an MSP or a vendor, does not matter. And that when you can engage, and you can engage in a certain volume and have all those other skills with you, how do you explain, why should I use Leaf instead of maybe another MSP where he lives, right? Whether you're national, geographic based, whatever. And you have to be able to answer those things, but you have to be able to measure them. So how many times a day, a week, a month, a quarter are your salespeople making that engagement? And that's where you've really got to embrace your systems, because without it, I hate to say this, and it's not these two guys, but I still work with too many. They're doing it in spreadsheets. They have the CRM. And then I go, hey, let's start off. Can I see the activity? And they're like, sure, I got to bring up the spreadsheet. And I'm like, please, if you're doing it in spreadsheets, start thinking about moving into your system and embracing your system of record.
Yeah, Adam, I think to the, a lot of the things that as we look at how we built and we're still building what we're trying to make sure we can execute, but like you said, it's the at bats, it's the shots on goal. If you don't have them, so that activity's got to be there. But I think the other piece that has been pretty instrumental is that we took a step back, and I think we talked about this in our last call, is 4 or 5 years ago, every deal that was out there looked like a good deal, right? And so if there were 9 or 10 prospects, 9 of them looked good. And one of the things we got really deliberate about, and it took us about a year, and maybe it's just because we're slow to figure this out, but we really got into what our go-to-market strategy was. What is the psychographic? What is the demographic? What is our brand promise? What is our brand promise guarantee? And teaching that to our sales staff also gave them more focus, so they stopped chasing ugly deals, right? And so what we found was that a lot of the times when our salespeople were failing is because they didn't have a clear definition of who we actually felt was the best customer and how to go about it and how to lose early, and in getting things out of your pipeline as quick as possible. And whatever it is, draw your line in the sand and say, this is what the ideal customer looks like. We follow a lot of the methodology around 7 strata strategy, and where we say, there's pragmatic, and those of you that probably have read Crossing the Chasm, the pragmatic page or the conservative Carl, knowing exactly what that persona looks like. So then when we're sitting across from them, we know, okay, that fits our model or that doesn't fit our model. And so I think that's coupled with activity, knowing who is the good fit is the next catalyst to real understanding of how to grow the sales team.
Yeah, now Lee, you had a story. You have shadowing. I think you spoke about having a more seasoned salesperson and then a junior salesperson kind of shadowing.
Right. So we have what we call business development executive and business development managers. The executives are really the ones that are out there hunting, but they are also shoulder to shoulder with the managers on, we use, our account management is on our sales side, not on our service side. We have technical account managers on the service side, but they are going shoulder to shoulder. So it's their responsibility to grow that book of business. So if our team, so we've split our teams into pods. So that team is responsible for, 50, 60 clients, and they have to be able to, in order to grow that client, they have to bring those skills down into the rest of the team. So they teach them, what does it look like to prospect? They walk them through our Make IT Easy reviews and QBRs until the point that they know how to deliver it without that person there. So we're training, just like we do with our technicals or level 4s or level 5s, we're having them train the level 2s so that they can skill level up and kind of, bat outside their own league a little bit and just build that muscle memory there.
By the way, that's one thing, because right, Warren, we've talked about it, is as you start to build that sales team, and everywhere I'm at, we start with 1, right? So I know everybody sometimes says, well, but it's different because you have a big team, but every team starts with 1. And I really do think that's such a good approach. As you bring on multiples, what happens is, I always think back, I've been in sales for 20 something years. And when I was an individual contributor, I learned from so many of my peers. When I was new, that's where I went to learn, and my peers and through some of that transformation of knowledge, I really learned kind of quick. And plus it fosters that little bit of friendly competitiveness. You don't want to have a dog eat battle, because that's not productive. But, salespeople, we don't mind a little bit of competition. And when you can foster that, and there's little contests out there and spiffs, and it's not about negative reinforcement, because with salespeople, when we get praised and where the other salespeople not getting praised, trust me, we want that praise. We'll sometimes do it without money. So much of the conversation, I think, always starts with how much is this going to cost me? what do I have to pay them? And I do like to remind everybody, it's not just about the money. You're missing the point. And I use the military for, and if anybody out there was a vet also like me, we got Veterans Day coming up, by the way. So thank you guys for anybody that's a vet. And thank you for non-vets who gave us taxpayer dollars. We really appreciate it. But in the military, I want to be very clear here. We were very underpaid and still are. You know, I made $37,000 my first 4 years. That's combined what I got paid in my first 4 years. And I will still to this day say they were the best 4 years of my life. And I think about all those awards we got, right? The little medals you see, guys, they cost like 50 cents they make in like other countries. And when you put on that little ribbon, you feel like $1 million. You feel so good. Why is it any different in sales? It's the same thing. If you understand the personality of sales, the reward doesn't always have to be monetary. Yes, we care about money and there's that part of it. But if you really can tap into the recognition and understand how to manage the psyche of salespeople, you're going to, I don't believe I've ever been the highest paid vendor anywhere. And I feel I've been blessed to be with some of the stickiest organizations because I really do understand that. And I think that if you guys can understand that, it really will help you with not only success, but with retaining salespeople.
So Warren, Terry did have a question about getting someone to embrace like sales methodology. So any thoughts on that?
Can you repeat the question? I didn't hear you.
But yeah, the question was about, so you hire a new account manager and they have to follow what your plan. How do you get them to do that? How do you look for the right person that's not going to push back or just
well, it takes a lot of weeding out process, but certainly you have to have a strategy in place. I think what Leif was saying, finding the right client, we spend a lot of time figuring out what clients make sense, what minimum MRRs make sense, what solutions make sense, what type of companies make sense, picking with the right verticals. So our help desk and our teams and our support teams could actually take care of these clients. So they've got to stick to a methodology, they've got to stick to a process, and they've got to understand that, you know, we're working within ConnectWise and they have to do reporting. So it's a long process. I don't think of any easy answer to any methodology except working through it. But, you know, these account managers, you know, we're looking to hire more account managers, and it's a long process to figure out who the right person is.
And I would say, you know, so like I mentioned, we chose the action selling method. And, you know, up until that point, we let kind of the method that the seasoned salesperson had kind of prevail. The problem for us was that we couldn't articulate our selling method. We identified who our client was, all that kind of stuff. But, you know, if you're asking somebody to take on your method, first of all, be sure that your method has been proven somewhere, rather than, and not just by, you know, us as principal sellers, right? Because probably our method only works for us if it was one person. And that's why we said, like, look, there's a ton of different selling methods out there. Like I said, Sandler, action selling, like there's hundreds of them out there. For us, we said, well, we're gonna choose a methodology that's been proven and that already had training material out there. So we didn't have to develop it, because that was the problem that we had for so many years. Is we'd said, okay, there's the Mytech way, but we didn't go through all the work of developing how to train the Mytech way on things. And, you know, selling is as predictable as delivering technical solutions are, but you have to follow a method. So, like, I think if you're having problems having somebody adopt a method, it's either that they might have come from a place that had a very good selling method. And if you don't have one, you might want to look at what they were using, right? because a method is better than no method. And at the end of the day, most of the selling methodologies out there are simple. They're just not easy, right? And the not easy part is it's work to sell. It's work to track what you're doing. It's work to be able to do all your follow-ups exactly right, or come out of every meeting with an objective before you ever go into the meeting, knowing what that objective is. So, you know, if you're having problems with somebody adopting a method, it might be because you haven't defined your method well enough to be taught. I would look to yourself or your method first and get real. Is it really a method, or is it what is just tribal knowledge? And maybe there's some reason why it's being, because that's where we were as an organization. We had 5 different methods with 5 different salespeople, and the good salespeople, they actually adopt to a method that is definable pretty easy. Matter of fact, they want a method at the end of the day.
Right.
Couldn't agree more. Do salespeople naturally love process? No. Do seasoned sales pros, Terry, do they believe that they could be good no matter what they do? There's a fair amount of truth to that. They do, but ultimately, good salespeople know that it's not sustainable, right? So part of it is that bravado when you're in sales. I'm going to use your example, Terry, of seasoned sales. If they're in seasoned sales, they've had success, right? Because they're a seasoned salesperson. They didn't go into another industry because they couldn't make it in sales. So they do feel there's a natural inclination to feel they have a recipe for success. But the good news is when you do have an established process that they can adhere to, they will jump in. Now, is that 100% of the time? Of course not. And right, Mark, maybe that's a point. Like we could probably talk a little bit, guys, about core values. I think zooming out, anytime you're bringing anybody onto your team, they can be good at something and still be a horrible fit at your company. So I know, like, for example, at Liongard, we are very adamant about our core values, and that before we bring anybody on, they have to really be aligned to those. And so I guess, I don't know, I'll put that out as a question to Warren and Leaf. Do you guys do the same thing with your teams? Do you guys have those core values that when you bring somebody on, regardless of role?
Yeah, they've got to agree to our core values. With every interview we do, we review the core values to make sure they understand who we are, what we're offering, the experience that we're trying to provide, the complete methodology of how we run, how we operate. This way, there's no promises, there's no blank promises, there's no uneasy times as that new person coming in or coming on board.
Yeah, it's the same with us. I mean, we try to delegate and elevate every staff as much as possible. We kind of use 2 bumpers to keep people kind of in their zone. One is our core values, and then one is what we call our one phrase strategy, which kind of epitomizes everything we have in our go-to-market strategy of make IT easy. And we say, if you make your decisions inside of our core values and are always trying to make IT easy for our clients, you're making the right decisions. But yeah, it's our, I mean, those that, have struggled with culture knows that culture is the basis for everything once you figure it out. And that's kind of what keeps the glue together in the organization. So, yeah, but I mean, it's our go-to-market strategy has probably been the biggest catalyst for our sales staff to be selling to our sweet spot.
Hey, Mark, one of the other questions I just sort of popped up from Greg, I was going to just read it. So wants to hire maybe Sandler sales. He has one, outside rep, a couple inside, and himself as the owner. And, does he need to go through a sales process weekly, monthly, or you hire a consultant to come in and put it together and then train your sales directly? So I can answer that in a couple ways because, again, I don't think it really matters Sometimes you do some of those things on the vendor side. Some of the times you do those things on the MSP owner side. I think it really depends. If you have a really good understanding of what you're trying to accomplish, do I think you need to bring in a consultant? No, not every time. But if you feel that it's something, and there's some really good ones out there that where you think that would help you and you need kind of that, that little kind of focus you where to go, I don't think it's a bad thing. But in regards to the cadence question, I would say if you're not having that methodical weekly discussion with your sales team as a review, and if it's not 45 minutes to an hour, I do get a little worried. And that's your chance using of whatever system record if you have. There's numbers, there's dashboards, right? You can see everything. You can look at the activity. We can look at the close one. We can look at those ratios. We can see how many first-time appointments, right? Demos, all of that stuff. And I think that you really do need to have that weekly cadence, and I'll throw it to you, Warren, because I know we've talked a lot about it directly, about how important that cadence is. And by the way, I'll say sometimes at the beginning, once a week won't be enough. If you're trying to get off right now, as we were navigating this year, my own sales team, we sometimes had a daily huddle. And then as things started to progressively get a little better, we pulled it back, but we wanted lots of real-time information. But I'd say the minimum is that once a week. Warren, what are your thoughts?
Look, we hired a sales guy 2 months ago, and it was from a competitor from one of the industries or verticals we sell into. And we're having cadence calls and email reports once a week over the weekend. I'll review everything that he's done over, Monday through Friday. I'll question him on certain things that he's up to, look at types of calls he's making, types of information he's gathering, and basically call him out. If I feel that the information is not precise or it doesn't provide me what I need, we'll call him out and making sure that next week's report is more positive. But like you said, Adam, you have to continue working with these salespeople because they have to be focused and they have to understand what we're driving to. We don't have, again, like Leif was saying earlier, he's got a very mature program. I'm actually going to look at this action selling method. I'm not so sure if things like Sandler, again, Sandler, I've learned under these guys years ago, but I don't know if they're MSP type focused. Guys that I think everybody should belong to as a peer group. And I'm not going to be an advocate for any one peer group, but I think these peer groups are amazing. And they allow you to talk to peers, and they allow you to talk to guys like Leif and myself and figure out what we're up to and what we've done wrong and what's doing right. And Adam has led many salespeople in his career, and he knows what a good sales guy should be and what they're up to. But this is all helpful information. And I think, anybody out of this industry, they don't understand what it takes to be a successful salesperson within the industry because of the continuing technology product line changing. And customers don't want to be bullshitted either. That's the other problem.
Hey, Warren, one thing I'll add there, and I appreciate the shout out, but I want to be real clear. I get lots of them wrong too. And no one's 100%. I think it's understanding when you have the right person, but they're in the wrong role. And, I like that. That means that our onboarding process of identifying who to bring on the team is right. And that I've seen happen a lot where you bring somebody on to be in one role, and then look, it becomes apparent they might be misaligned, but you got the right person because you held to your core values. And in a lot of other cases, someone that maybe wasn't a great hunter was a Hall of Fame farmer, right? Account manager, could be multiple different roles, and really doesn't matter, and vice versa. And I think that's one thing. But I've definitely you get plenty wrong because Leif, you said it earlier. Salespeople are good at selling, and you do your homework and you do the review. I don't know if I've ever looked at a resume, and I don't even know how long. I'm really trying to understand the person, and honestly, I just go to LinkedIn. The paper itself doesn't mean anything to me. I like to see what they've done in the industry, who they're connected to that I've worked with. I like to go read Glassdoor and see how the culture was at the company they left, because at some point they contributed to that culture, And so I think if you're not looking at Glassdoor, by the way, even with picking your vendors, I think you're really missing a good tool that's out there. I think Glassdoor is a phenomenal tool to provide some insight to people that have worked at previous companies, but also to when you're picking vendors. You know, you can really learn a lot. It's pretty interesting.
I think I was just reading Greg's comment. I think, Greg, what you were really driving at, I know you're saying doesn't matter whether you're using Sandler as an example. I'm not promoting Sandler or any particular selling methodology, but let me see if I can answer the question, because when we went through action selling, I participated in the launch training of action selling, even though I am not an active, like you, I'm not actively selling in the organization anymore. But it was necessary that I showed kind of some solidarity with my sales staff, that I was willing to go through it. So if you are not managing those salespeople, then I think what you need to do is make yourself aware enough of the methodology so that you can have intelligent conversations with your sales staff. Anybody that is managing those salespeople absolutely should go through the training. So my GMs, my general managers for each of the branch, my sales managers are required to go through the training. And if you have a sales team of 1 outside, 2 inside, and 1, I would be saying, who is their sales manager? And they should be going through it. If you are their sales manager, then yes, you should go through that training. Absolutely. Otherwise, you will not be able to manage them. You will not be able to hold them accountable to the method. Does that answer your question, Greg?
They will all need to speak Italian, but you will not be able to speak Italian as well.
Right.
So we did have another question regarding kind of the makeup of the sales teams. And maybe Adam, if you could even talk about Liongard too. So why don't we start with Adam, go to Leaf and Warren. You know, what does the sales team look like?
Well, I think, you know, we talked a little bit, and I want to make sure, because we scale for the MSP, it always starts with 1. When we started at Liongard and I got a chance to get introduced to them by an MSP, interesting enough, you know, we were an army of 1, right? So I want to be real clear. It always starts with 1. And I think it's just really understanding we talk a little bit about some of those delegation of roles and responsibilities. You know, I do like to use the military as an example. I was on a plane, and you have lots of different roles on the plane. Nobody on the plane does the same role. You have flight engineers, you have load masters, you have navigators, you have pilots, you have ACs and co-pilots. And a lot of ways, I really do think it's the same. And yes, for some of you out there, I am a fan of Simon Sinek. And, but it really is understanding that. And I think it's understanding when you're starting to build it out, you know, what are those delegation of duties? What are you expecting? And then as you start to mature and you get to, you know, we'll talk about Leaf, because he has that's a good size sales team, for a managed service provider, is really starting to understand, okay, where are you going to have those breaks? And the way I like to sometimes use an example is think about a conveyor belt, right? You want to keep that conveyor belt moving along. And so there's different things happening along that conveyor belt along the way. By the way, we haven't even talked about marketing. Without marketing, it's hard to have a sales team. Maybe these guys can comment a little bit about some of that real quick. But it really is understanding that you've got leads coming down, and sometimes that can just be a list that you purchased and you put it into a system. You may have bought a list of doctors, law firms you want to attack, and then we're going to start to call on those. And you may have an inside salesperson that calls on that, right? And so it's gone from marketing to your inside salesperson. Now they're setting up your outside salesperson. Your outside salesperson goes and closes it, and then maybe they don't own it. It's different everywhere, and these guys can comment. And then maybe that's where your field tech, takes ownership, and you've got onboarding and all those different things. And so I think it's really understanding from the very beginning, what are you trying to accomplish? And then as you mature, figuring out some of those delegation of duties and some of those different roles that you can delegate to.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is where size matters, right? And so if you're a $3 million organization, you might be at the size and maturity level where you have to have a hunter farmer. as you start to grow, that's where the opportunity can come in, where you can start to specialize and say, I can have a hunter and a farmer and maybe a coordinator to help them to maximize them. So, you know, when we were in the mode of $3 or $4 million, only having really one salesperson, they were a hybrid. And we just looked to say, how do you build the team from there? And now, you know, a team that was of one doing 3 or 4 million, I can have a team of 3 that might be doing 5 to 6 million, but they're not all in that hunter, the lead role, right? So using your analogy, Adam, of, you know, there's lots of different things on a plane. Well, if I'm flying a Cessna, I'm doing everything, right? But as that plane gets bigger, you're going to start to divvy up the roles in there. So like, you also have to be aware to not, you know, kind of outpace yourself too, unless you're making that investment, you know, further down the road. So, you know, if you're saying, well, I want a hunter farmer strategy and I'm 3 million, know that that's an investment you're going to make, and it will take some time to get the return on that.
I think any of these programs that we're trying to develop takes a lot of time and patience. And 3 million, 5 million, 10 million, you've got to have different perspectives on buying lists. If that's where you want to go, having a great referral program, that's what, you know, changes the whole horizon. If you've got I think, you know, from our perspective, we focused on providing great client care, amazing service, and that's what built up our business, so we can get referrals, and that didn't give us the pressure of hiring a sales team. So over the course of the last few years, we had cold callers or cold caller as our hunter, so to speak. And, you know, if he made it, if he was involved in sales or got us into a meeting, that's great. But the referral program and being able to look at our website or drive business through our website or drive business through vendors or webinars, I think that's what also led us to business. And again, those are different types of marketing strategies. But at the end of the day, it's a long process for the sales team. But I think, you know, this action selling, I'm even going to start looking at that action selling method. It seems like that's a pretty successful methodology. So just a lot of time trying different things.
Right. So we were down to 2 minutes, and this is kind of a summary of someone else's question. So a couple of years ago, happened to be at a large, happened to be at IT Nation, and MSP told me that his best salesperson he ever hired, he actually met at the window of Taco Bell. Great personality, hired. He had to be 21 years old, I believe. And then at the time he was 29 and just doing fantastic. Do you guys have any stories like that of somebody that you took maybe that seemed out of the norm and saw them succeed?
I got one I can start off with. One person in general, if you're out there and see this, how you doing? He's now a VP. He's a VP, by the way, not even in sales anymore, crossed over into the product side. When we met this person, he had been selling beds, and just the most talented person in the world. And now we have to remember too, when you hire a young person today, while they may not have quote unquote been in technology, I think of my 13-year-old. When I need something fixed, I don't call an MSP, I get my 13-year-old to come over. And so young people today are growing up in technology anyway. So even though regardless of where their professional experience might be, oh my God, they've been exposed to technology their whole life, but was literally selling beds and was probably very good at it based on what I've seen him do.
Yeah, what I can say is people buy, our clients buy from who they trust and like, right? And so the first thing that we look for is, can an individual develop authentic rapport with people? And if they don't have that DNA, they're probably not going to really succeed, because I mean, we're asking small business owners, you know, when we walk into a new client, everything is a risk for them. They don't know us from Adam, right? So the first place that we start is building rapport, and you know, what does that follow through look like, and how do they build that trust with them over time? You know, that's one of the first steps of selling is building the rapport and trust. And you know, a lot of times we want to go right to the heart of you know, hey, what do I have to, what products or services do I have to sell? And the way that we build that rapport and trust, at least at Mytech, is to really understand their business and what their needs are, and then find out. And that's how we try to fail early as well. So I don't think I have a story of anybody that, you know, taken off of a Taco Bell, but it's really more about the skill set of rapport that really matters. And I'm sure that guy working at Taco Bell probably knew how to build rapport with anybody that came up to the window.
In under 2 minutes, that's pretty crazy.
Right.
Great.
I think to end, I know we're running out of time, but to Leaf's point and to Adam's point, I have a story, but it's going to take too long. But I think the key about selling is understanding the client and also listening to the client. That's actually probably step one, because if you're going to just you know, mow over the client and explain to them what they need versus understanding their problems or their pain points, to me, that's the selling strategy of an MSP, is understanding the client and figuring out a solution that makes sense.
All right, great. All right. We have time for one question, if any came in.
And while you're looking at that, hey, one thing, first of all, you know, always love doing these, and, you know, really want to thank, you know, Warren and Lee for jumping in. Just really great feedback that's relevant. For myself, I love offering myself up. You know, if you guys hit me up on LinkedIn, if there's any questions, I love jumping on calls, helping wherever I can. I think I'm the only Slutskin that you will find on LinkedIn, as sad as that may sound. But if you'd like a little bit of help, you know, reach out. I love jumping on calls with you guys. And I just want to say thanks. I love being a part of this community so much.
Yeah, Leaf, Warren, Adam, thank you guys for joining us. We can go out with one last question. Lead lists, buying lead lists, yes or no? Leaf.
I'm sorry, repeat the question.
Buying a list of leads from somebody.
Yes, I say yes.
Warren says yes.
I say build your list of leads with pure companies that work with you.
Okay. All right.
Or Google, right? We build lists through Google, so it's fine.
All right. Well, awesome. Well, thanks, guys, and thank you. And for those staying with us, we'll see you in about 7 minutes.
Thank you, guys. See y'all later.
Thanks, Leaf, Warren, Adam. Thanks.